We're thinking spring here at Heirloom Creations, and nothing says spring more than a grandmother's flower garden. Is this a quilt on your bucket list? It should be. It really is a neat way to work with hexagons, and boy, do we have a technique for you. This will trump all your other ways that you've ever sewed hexagons together, so you gotta watch this entire video. So first off, we did do a video recently on the Hex and More ruler. This ruler will allow you to make 2, 4, 6, or 8-inch hexagons. So you might work with your scraps that you have. This is the ultimate scrap quilt because you can just keep going and build these flowers. You can have the centers the same. You can have a path that goes through them. Your choice how you decide to put them together. So we have actually gone one step further, and we have actually laser cut these hexagons. So this quilt and this kit is available at our store. So, and if you want your own hexagons cut for you, all you need to do is contact us or visit the website for all the details. Now, people always ask, well, how many of these hexagons do I need to make this quilt? And it kind of depends on your size and where you're going. And well, really, you just kind of need to get started. You'll know when you have enough flowers to work with your quilt. But this technique is something that you have got to see. So let's get started. Before you start sewing any hexagons together, we need to set up your machine and mark your work table for the perfect seaming. To start with, we're going to use the Q Tools Corner Cut 60 triangle. It's a couple things that this does. Number one, if you're working with 60-degree triangles, you can cut off those little nubs at the top and then have it positioned perfectly. But there are lines on here to get an exact scant 1/4 inch. This line right here says 1/4 inch minus. By having that line, we are going to mark all sides of one hexagon. So we're just going to use a light colored hexagon and line up that line and draw with a fabric marker using the Frixion pen. This needs to be done very accurately. First off, this is a sandpaper board underneath the fabric here. So when I draw, the fabric doesn't move on it. I'd like you to go ahead and mark all 6 sides. So we get those intersections across here. Again, this is it. So make sure you're nice and perfect as you're doing it. The beauty of the scant 1/4 inch is that the thickness of the pin is allowed for. So that's going to be our sewing line once we get it set up. Ready for the magic? Starting off using Quilter's 1/4 inch tape, we're going to mark our sewing machine so we know exactly where to start and stop when we stitch the hexagons. So on the marked hexagon you have, we're going to take and sink the needle into the intersection that we made using that scant 1/4 inch. We're going to line this up so it's just perfectly perpendicular to the throat plate of your machine. Now we're going to end up making or using 5 pieces of tape. Starting off, we're going to put a tape even with the edge of the hexagon, being sure not to cover up any part of the feed dogs. There we go. Make sure this is nice and accurate because once you've got it set, you'll never have to mark any hexagons ever again for your stitching. So there's the first one. Second one, we're going to put along this lower edge. Once you see this, you'll wonder why you didn't think of it yourself. So here it is. So second one, we'll put even with this side of the hexagon. And then the third one we'll put along the side here. Okay, this is step number 1. Then move the hexagon so your needle is positioned in this intersection. Get that all the way in there. Make sure it's nice and even on all the sides. And now we need 2 more pieces of the quilter's tape. Once again, stay away from the feed dogs here. So we're just going to put this one right next to this. And the last one right here. As you can see, we've put starting and stopping marks. So you don't even have to think when you put your hexagons in to sew. You can just go ahead when you put it in, You're going to set it down into this little valley, nice and even. Your needle's going to come down exactly where you need it to be. Then when you sew up through here, you're going to notice that you'll have a visual placement of where to stop, and your needle once again will not cross into the seam allowance. So, ready to see how this is going to work? When we put our hexagons together, okay, right sides together, all you need to do is set it up here. I've also shortened my stitch length down just a little bit, so I have a little bit more control as I come down to the end part. If you want to start with some locking stitches, that's fine. Just make sure you don't go back into the area where you don't want stitching to be. Okay, so we're just going to stitch right on through, and all you need to do is keep it straight here and then watch for your markings here. If you're going to stop earlier than you need. That's going to be key to this whole entire project. If you want, then reverse a little bit and then you're set to go. We'll cut that and pull it on out. What you're going to notice here is that we have the perfect intersection left open, so when we go to sew the next hexagon into this area, we have the perfect place to start and stop. Here's the first pair we stitched. It is actually part of the center row that we're going to do to make our garden grow. So sew those three together, then come up here, lay out these two, sew this pair together, and then below, sew this pair together. Once you have all three rows sewed together, then you're going to start working them into sewing it into a flower. Once you have set this up, put the two edges together and sew one seam at a time, sewing right up to that intersection. And because of your marked positions on your machine, you never have to think about where to stop with your needle. After you've done one row, take it out, cut the threads, and set it up to sew the next one. Cut your threads, and away you go. Finish up, and you will have a whole pile of flowers, and you can watch your garden grow. When you're ready to put intersections together, just go ahead and line them up. You can kind of feel where the seams are coming together and just look for that edge. And you can peek underneath and see when you've actually put it in far enough, marked on your lines here. And then just go ahead and start to stitch. This is where you'll actually see where your line is going to be. Go ahead and stitch right up to the stitch that is at that intersection. If you want, back up and then go ahead and take it out. You remember you're doing each seam as you go. So each seam is separate, and then you can go ahead and get that perfectly positioned every time you do it. All right, and just flip that around and do your next seam. One thing that you can do, if it is okay if you have just a little gap there, it's better to have a gap than to stitch too far and have it holding down and not looking good when it's all said and done. After you get all your flowers done, what you want to do is sew them in rows. So we're going to put flower, flower, flower all the way down, and then you're going to put rows together, just working down the intersections all the way through your garden. All right, enjoy.